Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I'm going live about now. We've obviously talked about so many different topics in the last couple of weeks, from Apple's competition, from Qualcomm to now AMD, to hopefully in the near future, in September, supposedly Interlunar Lake. We've talked about the future of M4 and how it will come to more Macs. Well, any Macs. For now, it's iPad Pro exclusive. We've talked about a lot regarding Apple Intelligence, iOS 18.1 now coming out, of course, with Apple Intelligence. It's not something yet that I was able to cover. Unfortunately, for myself personally, I am not capable of giving you an impression of iOS 18.1's Apple Intelligence features for the simple reason that I'm an EU guy. Let's put it like that. I wanted to use the C word, and no, not the NT word, but the CK word, and not the one with the O, but the one with the U. So figure that one out. But yeah, so unfortunately, no Apple Intelligence features for me. Let's see if that changes once Apple maybe comes into some kind of form of agreement with the European Union. Obviously, it's not entirely out of spite for the European Union. For now, the beta is very much US exclusive. So the EU discrimination will start with the official release, and there is still like some questions about how Apple plans to bring any of that, for example, to China. As far as I know, they haven't like built their own LLMs for Chinese, so it's very likely that they will have to end up partnering with someone as they build out their own in-house technology, which I am sure will be their main focus. So basically a lot. And before I get into today's main topic, which is sort of one and a half topic, I always want to remind you guys, please, if you're watching this and enjoying the channel and the content, please subscribe, like the video, share it out to anybody who you think might enjoy it. And of course, I highly encourage you to comment. I love me a lively live chat, as we are used to saying here. So you can agree with me, you can disagree with me in the live chat, and of course also comment once the video has already been uploaded. That helps a lot with the algorithm as well. Beyond that, if you want to support this channel directly, financially, you can do so with a super chat or a super sticker right while I'm live in the live chat. Or if you want to support this channel directly in the long term, there you can become a channel member. Shout out go to Angelica and Max Maximus, who are MarkTech Pro Max tier channel members, or you can support me over on Patreon. Link is in the description of this channel. Shout out goes to Louis Gold, who is a MarkTech Pro Max supporter over on Patreon. But now you can already see basically from what is on screen. And no, I don't mean the sweat on my forehead, because unfortunately it's an extremely, extremely humid week. I beg the gods for for finally it being like fall or something like that. And yes, I say gods because I've been rewatching Game of Thrones, so I'm constantly saying bullshit like seven hells, and people around me don't think that I'm going insane. Yeah, so what do we have today? Well, iPhone 16, obviously we've had rumors about it being redesigned for quite a while. Not a huge redesign by any means. It would still like inherit largely the design of the iPhone 15, which is of course like a squared off aluminum design, but now with slightly more rounded edges, which Apple introduced on the iPhone 15 series. That doesn't change too much. It's a little bit more comfortable, but like just visually from far away, I believe most people wouldn't even be able to tell that these edges like are a little softer than what we had with like the iPhone 14, 13, and 12th generation. Of course, the reposition camera will be nice. Over the years, we went from like the iPhone 10, 10s design that was like a pill that included the LED flash. Then, of course, we sort of started integrating that pill into the actual glass bag. Then we went diagonally as Apple increased the size of the main sensor. Now we are basically sort of going back, combining some old ideas, but we are returning to a full-on vertical layout between the two cameras, which will be a main 48 megapixel camera that will allow you to, just like on the iPhone 15, to have a 2x zoom to, like, of course, 1/4 of the sensor, which would come down to 12 megapixel, and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. Unfortunately, from everything that I've still heard when it comes to rumors, that this will be a pretty old ultra wide sensor at this point, because we got macro imaging, like where you can get up very, very close to a subject, and the problem is we got that with the 13 Pro, and it still hasn't found its way to the regular phone, even though of course it does have an ultra wide. So in my opinion, that is really bad at this point. Now, of course, beyond just macro photography, I kind of would have appreciated much better optics, a larger sensor, things that, for example, well, for one, we already got a slightly better camera, ultra wide camera on the Pros, but now the 16 Pro will go even further by introducing a 48 megapixel ultra wide camera. So giving the 16 at least like the ultra wide from the 15 Pro, in my opinion, would have made a lot of sense, but unfortunately that's not what we are seeing here. It will be most likely, again, things could change, it will most likely be still a pretty old sensor at this point, and as I said, no macro photography capabilities. Again, the problem with ultra wide is that ultra wide, because obviously it is a smaller sensor that's supposed to capture a larger area, it will always be significantly behind the image quality of the main camera. But I just believe that that difference is becoming ridiculous at this point. So I'm very happy with what Apple is doing on the Pro series, and all the more disappointing that the regular phone, which does start, by the way, at $800, and for now there is a plus at $900, and we're still talking about devices with 128 gigabytes of storage. The fact that these devices have like ultra wide cameras that are in many ways inferior to what I had on my 13 Pro Max at this point, close to 3 years ago, right? Because we cannot forget, we are getting new iPhones in 6 weeks. So if you ever thought to yourself like, oh, my Apple can still like push some features off, and yeah, they are, like, there's still no promotion coming to the regular 16 model. We now know it will not have a better ultra wide camera. Obviously it will now be lacking far behind the telephoto capabilities of the Pro series with their new 5x zoom. The main sensor will be improved on the Pros, while the 16 model will keep largely the same one, at least it's rumored, from the 15 series. So not much is changing except for one big jump, which is you will find the A18 processor inside, which will be a big leap over the A16. For the last couple of years, the regular models have lagged behind in one generation versus the Pros, and this will be the first one since the 13 Pro, since the 13 and 13 Pro that technically have the same chip. It's likely that the 16 Pro will have the A18 Pro, whether that means there's any CPU or GPU binning, or maybe a use of faster memory, or simply even software locks on certain features, for example, that relate to the camera. That remains to be seen. Supposedly both the 16 and the 16 Pro will have the 8 gigs of memory that we have now gotten used to on the 15 Pro, and that will be partially what enables the use of Apple Intelligence across the 16 series. Oh, I needed some really cold water. But why are we talking about all of this? We have, it is known, right, to quote Game of Thrones again, why are we talking about the iPhone 16 today? Well, it's actually not too complicated, because this is coming from leaker Sony Dixon, from whom I actually haven't heard much about in recent memory. I remember like a while ago, he was like a really big deal. I remember some of what he said definitely didn't pan out, but yeah, it's interesting to hear about him in that context. And we basically have the 5 rumored colors for the iPhone 16. To be very precise, though, these are not leaked iPhone 16 models, those are iPhone 16 dummies. So there is still some wiggle room, I guess, for those colors to look slightly different, or maybe the entire design to be wrong. If this is another case of Apple trying to confuse leakers and giving them false info to report, similar to what I always go back to when we talk about that squared off redesign of the Apple Watch that never came. And so the colors that we're getting here are white, black, blue, green, and pink. Obviously, this is a stark contrast to the colors that we have right now on the iPhone 15 series, which are barely colors. Because if you subscribe to the belief that white and black are not colors, but rather contrasts, well, if you go to the iPhone 15, if my internet will allow me, no, I don't want to go to Germany. That's all right. I already am here. I'm already denied Apple Intelligence. So we can see the iPhone 15, and oh, it has colors. How nice. Now, anybody who has ever gone to like the Apple Store and checked out these devices, you know that these colors are basically imperceptible. Let's look at the Plus. A $900 device with 128 gigs of storage, 2 cameras, 6 gigs of RAM. So slow USB-C. So definitely not the latest and greatest. So you can see the pink. It's very, very subtle. And this is the most intense you will ever see this color. In regular light, this looks basically like white. I promise you that. And that doesn't come from my slight color blindness. My inability to to differentiate between certain shades of green or red is not an inability to see colors in general. I've heard some people say that about men, that men are colorblind or whatever. Like, a lot of men have slight issues to say like which exact accent of color that is, and with how many colors there are. There's like some overlay between green and blue, obviously, that is very, very hard to differentiate sometimes, especially for certain men like me. Like, there are shades between red and pinkish that some people can get wrong. But yeah, if this was what I saw, I would tell you that it's pink. That is not how I ever perceive this color in regular light, in sunlight, in artificial light, in an Apple Store. Yeah, the most colorful thing about these devices is definitely like their aluminum side chassis, side rails, I guess. And this is how you sort of are supposed to differentiate these devices. Also funny, this is like the fact that Apple bothered with the money and resources to give a millimeter wave to the regular models is just absolutely baffling to me. But yeah, and of course you can see the difference with still the diagonal layout. Now this is pink, yellow. You can argue if you can see it better in the real world. I would argue, yes, you can see yellow maybe a tad better. And then there is blue. Of course, blue being the color that I barely see on here, right? Like, as I said, with pink, I see that this is pink. With blue, I barely see the blue on my 14-inch M1 Max mini LED M1 MacBook Pro. So yeah, to me, this is just... I hate this blue so much, because blue is my favorite color, and to see a blue that is like 5% blue and 95% white is just absolutely infuriating to me. Green, similar to yellow, I would say is a little bit easier to actually see. Again, that might be just how my eyes work, and then again, the only color that actually works is black. And what's hilarious here is that there is no white color, like no silver or whatever Apple would usually call a color like this. While with the 16 model, we are getting white. And I think that that's a very smart decision, because I believe that anybody who wants colors as subtle like this blue are very likely to enjoy white anyway. And so for people who actually want blue, give them blue. It's not quite my favorite blue that Apple has ever made, which is the iPhone 12 series blue, but it's definitely better than what we have on the 15 and 15 Plus. Again, so you can see the redesign right from the diagonal camera layout to the vertical one. This will also, at least according to rumors, this will enable the iPhone 16 to capture spatial video that is, of course, compatible with Apple Vision Pro. And shout out to the Apple Vision Pro. I have my appointment in the Apple Store tomorrow. Well, I will try it tomorrow after work, and we'll see how it fits and how pass-through works and things like that. One thing that I won't be doing though is I won't be buying it. This is just for like academic reasons, one might say. Yeah, and out of this, I probably would get the blue if I were in the market for a color for an iPhone 16. But yeah, it's again, I'm a pro user. You would have to, and especially before Apple, while Apple still doesn't give like promotion to like these models, I'm really not interested. But of course, I understand that there's still a very big market for these devices. I would love to see these devices be like $100 cheaper, or maybe come with double the base storage. I think that would help a lot with the value proposition, even before like promotion finds its way, and especially with the A18 chip coming to it and more RAM. I think that's already like more future-proofing the device. So if the 16 had like more storage or was better priced, and then the 17 series brought like promotion and maybe some camera upgrades, like in terms of hardware, I actually think those would be really good subsequent updates. But as it looks right now, without a price drop or more base storage, I just don't see much of the appeal of these devices. I would much more recommend people buy an older Pro model, maybe even a used or refurbished one, or at least just one that got discounted, so that like inventory could be cleared up. Yeah, and then with the 17 series, then we can talk about with stuff like promotion coming to it and maybe some other value improvements, and then we can see how it compares against the rest of the industry. But as it seems right now, Apple's Pro models are definitely the ones to get. Speaking of those Pro models, those are actually also getting a new color, and this is where it gets confusing, and now I'm wondering if I'm not the only colorblind person here. Now, as supposedly, and to my great dismay, Apple might be getting rid of blue titanium, which is the color of my 15 Pro Max, which is looking at me right now because I'm using it through continuity camera to record my videos. And supposedly there will be a new rose or rose gold or gold color. So that's definitely not a lot of information. And now we have basically got new info that suggests it might have more like a bronze appearance. Now, what can you guess from those colors that I just mentioned, like rose, gold, bronze, maybe potentially rose gold? Well, those colors are actually pretty similar depending on which exact tone of the color you choose. Obviously, bronze and rose would be like the most distinct shades here. But given how light reflects from it, it might actually be like one and the same color. So we don't know if this rumor goes against previous rumors or it's basically like an entirely new piece of information for us. So we'll have to see as the device actually comes out. Benvini is saying, I found the iPhone 15 so nice in the hand, very beautiful and small, which doesn't feel like bunker like the Pro version. Very unfortunately, wouldn't put 120 hertz this year. Yeah. Uh, it's my issue with the regular models really comes down to price. I think that the hardware package is good. Personally, of course, understand that most people don't give a flying fart about promotion. Like I like my mom has like my 13 Pro Max for almost a year at this point, and so she's gotten used to it. And like a month or so ago, when I was staying there, I took like her phone. I turned off promotion and then I gave it to her back. And then, like 3 4 hours later, she was still using her phone, scrolling, things like that. So, things where she definitely would have noticed the lack of promotion. And I was like, do you feel the difference? And she was like, what difference? And I'm like, well, does your phone not feel more sluggish? And she like really like looked at it. She knows I take this stuff seriously, so she indulges me from time to time, and she was like, I guess, but like, I mean, it's not much, is it? And I'm like, well, some people basically say that 60 hertz to them is pretty much unusable. And then I just showed her like the difference, real time, 60 versus 120 hertz. Or you could get it, maybe say with 120, Apple doesn't always try to get to a full 120, but like 90 to 100 hertz is still like very noticeably different than 60. It definitely was a noticeable difference to me. And I was like, well, can you see it now? And I even gave her like my phone and her phone simultaneously. And she was like, yeah, I can see it, but like it doesn't matter. And like you don't get like a headache from like it feeling sluggish or whatever. She was like, no, why? Like she used like a 10s Max before that, and obviously that felt completely fine. So this idea that like don't get me wrong, I fully understand why promotion matters. I'm somebody who likes high refresh rates myself. I love good color reproduction. I love high brightness. I love a lot that is only possible to get on like modern high-end displays. But I do want to argue against people who are like saying, oh, it's unusable or it's not worth the money. Like some people just buy phones, and we've talked about it here. It's like the color is like a big reason. Like I believe it was like Ariana Grande, right, who was just like who was taking a selfie with an iPhone 15, and people online were like, oh, with all her money she could have gotten the Pro, or for even less money she could have gotten an Android device with like 120 hertz and 3 or 4 cameras, whatever. And I guess she probably wanted an iPhone, and she got the iPhone in the color that she liked. I think that just mattered more to her than any processor, any promotion capability. And if Apple tells her by the end of the year, sorry, Ariana, we don't give you Apple Intelligence on this specific model, then she will be like, oh, what model should I get to get one? And Apple will be like, well, either the 16, right? Either the 16 Pro, that's our more expensive version that supposedly will have like now a new rose or gold or bronze color. So maybe that will appeal to you. Like maybe if you didn't like the previous Pro colors, maybe you're like this one. Or you get the 16, which is the direct successor. It will give you small improvements across like camera and stuff like that, from a new image signal processor on the chip. It might have better battery life on the smaller model, but worse battery life on the larger model. But the colors that you now will be getting are much more distinct, much more saturated. And that's what she will buy, like whatever she likes in that regard. And again, I'm not talking directly for Ariana Grande. I'm primarily making the point that for what is very important to us in like the nerd community is very often not just, oh, they're like kind of neutral about it. No, they basically don't care, right? You can show them that difference. You can go like beyond even retina resolution or whatever. You can try explaining them why a 3000 nit screen is good, and things like that. And they will be like, yeah, but whatever. Can I see my display in bright sunlight? Because the iPhone 15 already goes up to 2000 nits. And if you tell them, well, yeah, they'll be like, yeah, then why should I pay more, even if have all the money in the world? Ben Winnie's saying, what I find crazy is that I know the bezel is smaller in the Pro version, but there's something on the form factor of the non-Pro that feels better and is pretty. I I think it mostly comes down to the camera, right? Because it is not just big, right? But it catches the eye more with like its three cameras. Um, and I think it also like defines almost a little bit how you hold the device, because you just cannot put your finger like that far into device over the device without like touching one of the cameras. And then, of course, there is the lighter weight of the non-Pro models that I believe is like very much contributing to the device feeling more balanced. I don't know if like the position of the cameras might mean the weight distribution on the Pros is actually worse. I cannot speak to that because obviously that would be a mathematical thing that I would have to find out. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if those things make it a little bit more comfortable. Of course, as I said, the 15 series also got like the slightly softer edges. I mean, on a material basis, you could argue that aluminum itself is a little softer than titanium, but then again, you aren't really pressing into the actual metal, you're just holding it. But maybe that contributes to it. Maybe partially it's also something like temperature. Aluminum is very good at at transferring heat, so maybe just your hand that obviously radiates a lot of heat just feels more comfortable with a metal like that. So there's actually a lot to consider. And guys, before we continue, we've been streaming for about half an hour. Highly recommend you guys, please, if you're enjoying this, subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it out to people who you think might enjoy it, comment on the video. I love me lively live chat here. And if you want to support this channel directly, leave a super chat or a super sticker right while I'm live. Even a small donation is very much appreciated. I reinvest it right back into the channel. And of course, if you want to support this channel in the long term, you can become a channel member. So there are different tiers of like regular support that you can give, and the same goes for Patreon. The link for that is in the description of this channel. Yeah, so maybe Apple would return here to like a rose or like a rose gold color, which of course hasn't been on the Pros for quite a while now, and goes as far back as the iPhone 6s. There is a rumor that I don't even know how like credible is it in any way, was that there would be a different process for how Apple handles the titanium. Like for now that we know that the titanium isn't like anodized in the way that aluminum is, so it's like basically painted in a complicated and more advanced process than how you paint the walls at your apartment, but it's essentially painted. This is why when you scratch into the device, you don't really like see that color again under that scratch. You just see the natural titanium. Of course, unless you get the natural titanium model, then if you scratch it, you still see natural titanium below. And supposedly Apple might have changed that painting process. I don't know if it would be any form of anodization or just a more advanced painting process or coloring process, I guess. And it's possible, again, I don't want to say it's likely because I cannot evaluate those rumors for you guys, is that we might get a shiny chassis similar to what we had with the stainless steel Pro models, rather than the matte design that we got with the 15 Pro series. Otherwise, the rest of the color lineup should be the same, except that this new rose gold, bronze, or whatever color supposedly replaces the titanium blue. I still have no idea why Apple doesn't want to commit to having blue in the lineup. It was stupid when they introduced like I believe, purple on the 14 series for no reason, even though people really, really liked blue on previous models. And now they've reintroduced the blue for the pros. They've actually made it extremely beautiful with the titanium blue, and now they're supposedly getting rid of it again. So I've said already on this channel that the chance that I'm getting the 16 Pro is actually not very high, because I don't have anyone I would like hand down my 15 Pro to. So to me, it just feels like it would be wasteful. And in my opinion, I don't like waste. And I just want I think I want a really big update, and especially since Apple Intelligence, even if it launches in the EU, like for one, I do have a 15 Pro model, so I will be ready for that. But even if I have to wait 3 or 4 months for it, I might as well wait for it on a device that I know will get it anyway. It will not be too far behind this new model, and then on the model afterwards I know that I will have more RAM, which as a nerd is something I care about, which again I know most I assure you Ariana Grande probably doesn't care about the amount of RAM on her iPhone. And then I've already made a bet on this channel that I would that there will be at least one 2 nanometer device from Apple in 2025. My suspicion is that that device will be the 17 Pro. And of course, if the 17 Pro gets like a better selfie camera, a better telephoto camera, and then potentially like a 2 nanometer processor that also keeps on improving the image signal processor, things like that, I just don't think that I would feel that much difference going from like the 15 Pro to the 16 Pro. But as I also said before, is I might still buy it for like 2 weeks or so and just to review it on this channel. So I wouldn't keep it necessarily, but I'll see. If the upgrades are really small and things like that, I might not even do that. Or if I go to the website and the waiting times are like 2 months or something like that, so my review would be essentially meaningless at that point, then I won't do it either. So again, it's a complicated interplay. If Apple wants to send me a review unit, I promise you I will make a dedicated, beautiful video about it. But I highly doubt that that's happening. Benvini is saying if it comes with 12 gigs of RAM, it will be a game changer. No, it won't. This is the issue though, because iPhones are fast, iPhones are performant, and with how most people use them, more RAM doesn't really matter that much. Believe me, I know what you mean, right? It's the same argument why I argue that Macs should have 12 gigs of memory, right? Because it's not exactly correct, but it's around in the ballpark, right? If you say, oh, the operating system maybe takes up like 4 gigs of memory, it's not true, it's less, but let's say it like that, right? Because it's the simplest math. Then out of 8 gigabytes, you're left with 4. Now, you can give all 8 to one task, like maybe a demanding game or a pro application, but that would mean that like a lot of your background tasks now, almost by definition, are extremely slow, right? Even if you don't actually exhaust your processor in terms of its rendering capabilities or its CPU, even if you have resources left in terms of like logic on the CPU, that won't mean much because you now don't have any RAM for those tasks. If you go with 12 gigs of RAM, that effectively doubles your additional RAM amount, right? Because we went from like 4 gigs of RAM for the system, which means 4 gigs for everything else if you don't clear anything out from that system, which means that you would often have to rely on like swap memory. You would have to involve the SSD, of course, being much slower than the memory. So I understand 12 gigabytes could effectively be twice as much memory, and 16 gigabytes could actually be like 3 times as much effective memory, going from like 4 gigabytes for anything but the system to 12. So Believe me, guys, I fully understand it. But I have a 32 gigabyte M1 Max 14-inch MacBook Pro, and I have an M1 256 gigabyte iPad, which, as you know, the 256 gigabyte models do not have 16 gigabytes of RAM. They have 8 gigs of RAM. And I have to say, in terms of like average responsiveness and stuff like that, I just don't feel a difference. The operating system makes a difference, yes, because macOS is much more willing to shoulder a lot more background tasks, but that's also not what I really want from a phone or even a tablet, because that will impact a smaller battery a lot more, and it will also impact a smaller processor with like less logic, less cores, less cache, more than my M1 Max. So again, that's just my perspective. I'm always for more, of course, especially if I don't have to pay that much more. But I argue a little bit against terms like game changer. Benveni saying, I don't think Apple Intelligence is worth the rushing to get iPhone 16. Well, the iPhone 16, do you find the iPhone 16 mid or Apple Intelligence? Because I think that Apple Intelligence is exactly what I wanted, but I also don't want that much from AI these days, right? I wanted to mostly leave me alone and then handle stuff like writing and summarizing and correcting stuff. And I also wanted to be like very, very clear that like this is AI running right now. This is potentially AI running on my device. Some of it may be being given to the cloud. This is what I want. I don't want AI that like even though Apple will have like image playground and I probably will use it sometimes for things like thumbnails, I just cannot like, this is not the core appeal of me of AI, nor do I want like a super generalized chatbot. I understand that in that area, of course, like ChatGPT will be more impressive, but for that I also do get ChatGPT integrated into Apple AI, into Apple Intelligence, so that's already like a win for me. Ben Vinny saying the best Siri will come later this year. Well, yeah, for now it's a beta. You cannot do you mean like what you find mid is like what we got with the latest beta? Because yeah, it's the first Apple Intelligence beta whatsoever, and it's basically entirely built around features that are running on device. I'm not even sure if Apple turned on any servers at this point when it comes to what they build to handle like artificial intelligence in the cloud. What did they call it? Like private cloud compute? Yeah. So yeah, and I understand that for you it doesn't have to be super useful. I don't think AI will be super useful to a lot of people for quite a while. And I've said that before. To me, AI will be at its best. Swallowed some ice. When it's handled by like specific professionals in their dedicated fields, they're feeding it with a lot of data that is hyper specific to their fields. I myself have participated in a data collection mission for dermatology, where I've collected like high resolution multispectral images of melanoma and other skin cancers. I classified them based on upon the histological results that we got from the lab. So, and then the AI was fed like, oh, this is what you see like under the camera, and this is what you see under the microscope, right? And I fully believe that stuff like that will be very, very important. I think the military will love AI. I think medicine will like AI. I think banking and other math-related stuff will probably like AI, but they will tune it to their needs. They will not be asking ChatGPT with its tendency to hallucinate. I don't think they will want even that much interaction with natural language for it. Like, it might even be stuff like that is based on like LLMs from OpenAI or Google or Meta, but it just will be packaged in a very different way. That's kind of how I see the best possible future for AI, one that is much, much more dedicated. At least that's kind of my opinion. um yeah, so again, I just want to remind you guys, we are 6 weeks away or so from the next iPhone models, so a lot of what we are getting right now will be cleared up in the near future. Now, when it comes to Apple Intelligence or itself, I've already said I unfortunately cannot give you too much of an insight there because I live in Europe. So even though I have iOS 18.1, there's no way for me to subscribe to like the waitlist for Apple Intelligence, nor would I be able to use it even if my account was like whitelisted, because again, it's also region restricted. Like in regions outside of Europe, it seems like you can just set your phone to be US based, and then you still can access those features if you're whitelisted, that is. While in the European Union, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't know if a VPN would help or something like that, but it seems like there's just no legitimate way for you to tell your phone that you're in the US and then get those features. If you are in the EU, you are effed, at least for now. So that's a little bit of a bad thing. Now, I do want to say, I do not want to make this video too long. This is like just a very brief hello from me. I'm very, very busy right now. So I do actually want to shout out two videos, which I might watch like maybe in a future video or something like that. I might react to. Shout out to 9 to 5 Mac, who has a really good breakdown of the new Apple Intelligence features. So again, there are not that many. Most of them are primarily like writing based, so for stuff like summaries and rewriting what you wrote to make it sound a little differently, to proofread it for like any spelling or grammar mistakes. So that's cool. Of course, we've already read a lot about the Ryzen AI 9 HX370 and the Ryzen AI 9 365 chips, but I also want to recommend the latest video from the Fox, PHAWX, who has reviewed the Asus ZenBook S16 with those latest processors. I've actually haven't gotten to hear his final conclusion, but I know that his methodology is pretty good. So yeah, let me know maybe in the comments later on if you believe that any of those videos are worth reacting to or things like that. Of course, there's been like the video with MKBHD and his like FBI story. I believe it concerns like the Pablo Escobar phone, but I didn't care much to watch it, to be honest. I'm not too much into this kind of drama. Like, I like drama that's actually substantive, and while it's probably a cool story, I just haven't yet invested any time to find out too much about it. Yeah, basically for now, this is basically all rumors. Like, we've already, of course, covered others throughout the weeks. There will be an Apple like financial report on August 1st, so that's not too surprising. It's on a Thursday. There will be of course, throughout the years, the M4 will be coming to more and more devices. So that's definitely a rumor that I want to keep. Well, it's not even as much of a rumor. It's basically an inevitability, but we just don't know when exactly we're getting like the M4 MacBook Pro, and whether that means we're instantly getting the M4 Pro and the M4 Max chips, and whether or not that means we might be getting like M4 Ultra devices, maybe sometime earlier than late next year, which is kind of the going rumor from Mark Gurman and others. So that would be a little disappointing. Just today, I saw a rumor like that Apple could be combining micro LED and tandem OLED. So basically like a double layer micro LED displays for the next generation of Vision Pro. I think that's actually a pretty cool idea and would potentially be a good method to differentiate between like a Vision Air, which in my opinion should still have micro LED, micro OLED, but like then maybe the larger version is then tandem OLED, gets brighter, gets higher refresh, is more efficient. I think that would be very cool. When is the Google event? That's a good question. I think the 18th or so. Google Pixel event. Or was it like Google Pixel Pro release? It's in August 30 at the 9th. Oh, it's in August 13th. So yeah, I will. Yes, that's in 2 weeks. I should be able to react to that because I believe 10 a.m. Pacific time is watchable for me in German time. I believe that's like 6 p.m. or something like that. Yeah, Andrew's saying the 13th. Yeah, I looked it up. Thank you very much. I don't know why. Like the entire Google Pixel thing though. It's like I hate it when companies tell us exactly what's coming. And I know that of course we've already reacted to like the Google Pixel 9 Pro and 9 Pro Fold design and things like that. And to me it's just a disappointment to see when Google does like I know that it gets leaked, right? But still, I would prefer at least some secrecy before it happens. For now, what we have seen is actually interesting is that the 9 Pro, this is like maybe like somewhat worth covering. Pixel 9 Pro, 128 gigabytes. It's leaving little to the imagination. So we already have like super detailed comparisons between like every generation and stuff like that. So Pixel 9 will come with 128 gigs of storage. Does that apply to the Pro? Is my question. We've also seen more. So it seems like the Pixel 9 Pro as well, even though it bumps up its memory to 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is of course very good because Google does want these devices to handle AI pretty well. But it seems like when it comes to storage, they're really skimping out. And don't get me wrong, I know that Apple of course overcharges like crazy for storage, but there's always of course a slightly different perception of Apple, which essentially always competes with itself for the most part. Like, of course, they do have to consider the larger market, but to them, it doesn't matter if a device is like objectively like would be $100 too much if it was running Android, right? Or even $200, or sometimes even $250 or $300, because their argument is, well, it's not running Android, it's running iOS. There's no other way to get it outside of like the Pixel and supposedly Samsung, but we'll see how both those companies handle long-term commitments. There is nothing that gets supported for as long. There's nothing that has the same like customer support infrastructure as Apple has. Of course, there is just like the appeal of already having iOS, having invested into apps on the App Store, having like running subscriptions through the App Store, even subscribing to Apple's services like iCloud, Apple TV Plus, Apple Music, whatever. There's a big appeal here to just get an iPhone because your previous phone was already an iPhone. And we've already seen that Apple doesn't go too crazy with pricing when the rest of the market can compete somewhat. This is why we haven't really gotten a substantial price increase ever since the iPhone 10 in 2017. You could argue maybe from 2018 when the iPhone XS came at $1099, and even with all the inflation, prices haven't really budged too much. So what I was just trying to say, for Google to give you 16 gigabytes of memory but 128 gigabytes of storage on devices that are very, very much camera focused, and also, by the way, to limit those devices to 256 gigabyte options when like Samsung easily gives you 512, right, as options, and often even sells you like 1 terabyte versions. Of course, Apple has 1 terabyte versions on the Pros, but even regular iPhones like the non-Pro models go up to 512 gigabytes. So I just find it somewhat insulting that not only do you get a very, very limited base configuration, again, this is a device that will have to store like large language models that take up a couple of gigabytes and things like that. This is a high-end model that you're supposed to be keeping for years and years. It has 16 gigabytes of relatively future-proof RAM capacity, but then you end up with 128 gigabytes of storage, and unfortunately you seem to, of course, right now be limited by the Tensor G4, which, like, to all respect to Google, sometimes there's just no way that the Tensor G4 this year competes with A18 based on second generation 3 nanometer, or with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 4 that is also very likely to be on TSMC 3 nanometer, and even Samsung might sometime next year switch to their GAFET 3 nanometer chips. So at that point, we are very much waiting, in my opinion, for the Pixel 10 that will be getting the Tensor G5 chip, and with it, finally a noticeable node upgrade, a noticeable efficiency upgrade. But yeah, if you ask me, like, unless the price is really aggressive, I probably wouldn't even consider the Pixel 9 Pro. Maybe like the Pixel 9, because it still has like the same chip and it's obviously better priced, but we'll have to see how it actually compares with like the 16 Pro. It's coming out a month before the 16 series, so let's see how all of that compares once we actually get our hands on it. That's about it for today. As I said, I apologize, I don't have too much time today. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you like the topics. I hope you will let me know what you want me to see cover next. Before you go out, please like the video, share it out to anybody who think might enjoy it. If you like the channel overall, please consider subscribing to it. We recently got a few new subscribers. I'm really happy about that. And of course, comment. You can still leave a comment right now if you might have some burning question needing to be answered, or just comment on if you like the video or not. Of course, if you want to support this channel directly, whenever you catch me live, you're free to. You're very much, of course, appreciated if you send a small donation in the form of a super chat or a super sticker. All direct support is, of course, very much appreciated. And if you want to make this support long term, then you can become a channel member on this channel here on YouTube, or you can subscribe to my Patreon. Link is in the description. Yeah, that's about it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I think we are getting closer to like Techtober and things like that, where it gets a lot more interesting. I think that beyond the iPhone, we are of course getting new Macs this year from Apple, so there's a lot that I'm just really looking forward to. And beyond it all, as always, let me know what you liked, what you disliked, and what you would like to see me cover next. Thank you so much again. This is Mark Tech, tuning out.